My name is Audrey Sterling, and at 32, I thought I understood the weight of disappointment. I was wrong. My mother, Catherine Sterling, is the queen of Philadelphia high society. She taught me one unshakable rule: perception is reality. And her only daughter, a sergeant in the United States Army and a curator at a prestigious museum, choosing to marry a man who repairs old books in a shop that smells of dust and glue, that was a perception she would never, ever accept. On the morning of my wedding, my parents didn't arrive to help me get ready. Instead, I received a text message. My mother's words were as sharp and final as a guillotine. Audrey, we cannot endorse this charade. You are throwing your life away on a sentimental fantasy. Do not expect us. They believed they could shame me into submission, treat my happiness as an inconvenience to be managed. But they had no idea who was standing as my witness that day. The video I sent them from the reception caused their numbers to flash across my phone screen for a week straight. But before I show you what was in that video, hey everyone, if you're just joining us, a huge welcome. My name is Audrey, and this is the story of the day I reclaimed my life from my family's expectations. If you've ever felt like your choices were being judged by those who are supposed to love you unconditionally, I need you to do something for me. First, tap that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss a moment of this journey. Second, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. Seeing your locations always reminds me of the powerful global community we're building here. Now, let's get back to the story. The light in the small, historic library where we held our ceremony was soft and golden, filtered through century-old stained glass. I stood there in my dress uniform, my sergeant's stripes, a quiet testament to a discipline and strength my parents could never understand. The air hummed with a quiet, profound joy, thick with the scent of old paper, beeswax polish, and the lush white gardenias I carried. It was a world away from the cold, marble-floored ballrooms of Philadelphia where my parents hosted their galas. But here, in this room, every smile was genuine, every tear was real. The pews weren't filled with politicians and socialites. They were filled with my chosen family, my colleagues from the museum, their minds sharp with art history, my husband Ben's community, librarians, writers, and historians, and seated among them a row of soldiers from my unit, their postures ramrod straight, their presence a silent, unwavering wall of support. They were the people who valued substance over surface, heart over pedigree. They had earned their place here. My parents' seats in the front row remained starkly, painfully empty, but that row wasn't completely vacant. Sitting serenely in the chair reserved for my mother was a woman who, at first glance, seemed to embody the very elegance my mother worshipped. She was in her late 60s, dressed in a simple but exquisitely cut dress of dove gray silk. She held herself with a quiet grace. But when she turned and her eyes met mine, a warm, knowing smile gracing her lips, I felt a surge of unwavering certainty. She had my mother's same high cheekbones and elegant neck, the same poise. But where my mother's demeanor was a fortress, this woman's was an open door. She was my secret weapon. She was my guest of honor. Just moments before the processional music began, my best friend and maid of honor, Sarah, handed me my phone, her face etched with concern. "It's your mom," she whispered. I felt a familiar cold dread settle in my stomach, but I nodded, pulling on the mask of composure I had perfected in basic training. I slipped into the librarian's private office, the heavy oak door closing with a soft thud. I answered, "Mother?" Her voice was not that of a happy parent on her daughter's wedding day. It was clipped, precise, and frosted with disapproval. "Audrey, she began, her tone leaving no room for pleasantries. Your father and I will not be attending. She stated it as a simple, unchangeable fact. He has a critical meeting with the board of the symphony. You know how important his patronage is. I remained silent, my knuckles white around the phone. And she continued, her voice dropping into a register of profound disappointment. I cannot stand by and watch you make a spectacle of yourself. A sergeant in the army, marrying a bookbinder. It's a charming hobby, Audrey, not a profession. You are a sterling. This is an embarrassment. We will not endorse it. The word embarrassment hung in the air, toxic and familiar. At 32, a non-commissioned officer and a respected professional, I was still being scolded like a child. Choosing Ben, a man whose kindness was etched in the lines around his eyes and whose integrity was as strong as the leather bindings he restored, was not a logical partnership in their eyes. It was a failure of ambition, a stain on the family crest. The poet Audre Lorde once wrote, if I didn't define myself for myself, I would be crunched into other people's fantasies for me and eaten alive. I had been letting them eat me alive for 3 decades. This was the final bite. I said, I understand. And the 2 words were a key, turning the final lock on the cage they had built for me. I didn't wait for her reply. I ended the call, powered off my phone, and handed it to Sarah. I said, hold this for me. I have a wedding to attend. The reception was everything they would have despised, which made it absolutely perfect. It was held in the library's main reading room. There was no string quartet playing Vivaldi, but a local folk band. There was no 5-tiered fondant cake, but a table laden with pies from a local bakery. The air was rich with the smell of good coffee, spilled wine, and genuine laughter. My dress uniform jacket hung over the back of my chair, a symbol of a life of service they could never comprehend. Ben held me close as we shared our first dance, his hand warm on the small of my back. In that moment, surrounded by the people who truly knew and loved us, I felt a peace I never knew was possible. This was my reality. This was my choice. Then I made my move. I caught Sarah's eye and nodded. Then I walked over to my guest of honor, the woman in the gray silk dress. Aunt Eleanor, I said softly, would you do us the honor? Her eyes, so like my mother's, yet so fundamentally different, twinkled. It would be my absolute pleasure, my dear. We gathered, Ben and I, Sarah, and Aunt Eleanor. We stood before a towering shelf of encyclopedias. I held up my phone, switched it to video mode, and pressed record. To my dearest Catherine, Aunt Eleanor began, looking directly into the lens, her voice clear and melodious. I'm here at your daughter's beautiful wedding. It's a shame you couldn't make it. You're missing a truly wonderful celebration of love. She then turned her gaze to me, her expression overflowing with pride. Audrey, you look radiant. And Ben, she said, turning to my beaming husband, you are a truly good man. Welcome to the family. She then leaned slightly towards the camera, her smile never wavering, and delivered the final, devastating blow. It's so lovely to finally be welcomed back after all these years. Family is everything, isn't it? I stopped the recording. The 30-second clip was a masterpiece. It was a glimpse of the joy they had rejected, and it contained a ghost from their past they had tried to bury. I opened the family group chat. I attached the video. I typed no caption. I simply hit send. For 5 minutes, nothing. Then my phone still in Sarah's purse, began to vibrate. Then it buzzed again and again. Catherine Sterling, Richard Sterling, my sister Isabel. The calls came in a frantic staccato rhythm, a symphony of panic from their pristine world. They had seen the video. They had seen her. They knew the story her presence represented. I looked at Sarah, who was watching the phone light up with a look of grim satisfaction. A slow, serene smile spread across my face. I took the phone from her, saw my father's name flashing with an urgency he had never shown for my achievements, my happiness, or my well-being. I didn't answer. I held the power button down until the screen went black. The frantic buzzing ceased. All that was left was the sound of the folk music, the clinking of glasses, and the joyous noise of my real life. The game was over, and I had just rewritten all the rules.